Good morning, and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It's still the beginning of February and time to start more seeds. Stevia. Now we're going to start with the stevia. You know, that sweet green leaf that grows on a plant? A lot of people are curious how to grow it, so I thought I would show y'all how. Now, I've grown it before from seeds, and I've always used Botanical Interests seeds, and I've had really good success with those. This year, I'm going to be trying seeds from Baker Creek. Now, I want to warn you, some herbs, and specifically stevia, most of the seeds are sterile. They won't germinate, and it won't be the seed company's fault. So we're going to go ahead and plant this full packet to see how many actually come up. When you buy these as a plant from the nursery, most of those come from cuttings. That really is the best way to start and make a new stevia plant. And the seeds are tiny. Look at that. Now, anytime you research seed information, you're going to find a variety of info depending on where you look. So I found to start it 10 weeks before your last freeze. And that time's going to vary about where you get your information. Right now it's 11 weeks before our last freeze, so this is perfect for me. They're going to germinate from 10 to 21 days. I'm going to want to put them outside mid-May here, 2 weeks after your last freeze. That's going to be pretty standard. Now the seeds are going to stick to that little plastic packet. So be careful and just take your time. I used all the seeds. I counted 16. I'm not going to put any soil on top of them. Just put them in there with a little drop of water because they're going to need the light to germinate. You don't want to flood them. You don't want them to flow out of the hole. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to pot up candy stevia. Now I've already prepared my 4-inch pots. Most of these plants I'm going to give away for free. I only need 1 or 2 for myself. These stevia seedlings are 4 weeks old. Now these little bit bigger plants germinated in only 4 days. And the tiny ones are small because it can take 21 days to germinate. And remember, most of those seeds will never germinate because they're sterile. But this is the reason you see the variety of size, because it can take about 3 weeks for all of them to germinate. Now, stevia seeds require light to germinate, so don't put soil on top, only surface sow. Don't block. Now, if your stevia seeds had a poor germination rate, don't blame the seed company. Most of the stevia plants you buy, they're from cuttings. They didn't grow those from seeds. The seeds germinate best between 70 and 75 degrees. Here in north central Maryland, stevia is grown as an annual. It's only grown during the warm months. So here in zone 7, in the winter, you can either bring the plant inside to overwinter or take cuttings and propagate them. In zone 8 and 9, it's possible the roots might come back in the spring. The top of the plant's going to die back, but the roots might survive. But to truly grow it year-round, that's zone 10. Now these are going to grow inside under lights for 7 more weeks. Then we're going to bring them outside to start hardening off after our last freeze. Here, that means early May. Then we're going to put them out into the garden 2 to 4 weeks after that last frost or freeze. Here, that's after Mother's Day or mid-May. Now we are going to pinch these back or cut them with scissors, and we're going to try to propagate those to make some more plants. But right now I feel like they're just a little bit too small. I want them to get bigger. Wow, the grow room is full of seedlings. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today we're going to pinch back our stevia seedlings. Now you can use your fingers, but I'm going to use these embroidery scissors. And because most people buy their stevia as plants instead of starting them from seeds, it was hard to find information about pinching back seedlings. Now I do know I want to cut it above the growth node, above the first set of true leaves. But because they're growing so slowly, I'm going to do an experiment and cut them at a variety of heights and see what the results are. Now the tallest seedlings are 6 weeks old, but it required 21 days for them all to germinate. Big or small, they were all potted up 10 days ago. Now, I found that I did pinch one back several days ago, and let me show you. I cut it out in the center, and it sent up 2 new shoots. So I think above the second set of leaves is the right place because the first set of true leaves are right there on the soil. So I think going up to the second set is a better option. That's what I'm going to do with the rest of them. Now, if you feel like this is a waste, you can try trimming off the lower leaves, dipping it in rooting hormone, or putting it in water, and maybe you can grow a new plant. But my grow room's full. I don't have the space, but maybe I'll try that next year. Now, these seeds were sown 7 weeks ago in 2-inch soil blocks, and they grow very slowly. Most of the plants you buy are grown from cuttings, not seeds. Now, frost will kill stevia. So these are going to keep growing here in the basement under lights for 5 to 6 more weeks. I'm going to start hardening them off, getting them used to the weather after our last frost. Here, that's the beginning of May. Now this baby one, I'm not going to pinch this one back today. It was the last to germinate. Now we're going to plant these in the garden 2 weeks after the last frost. Here, that's mid-May or after Mother's Day. Good afternoon and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time to harden off our sweet leaf plant Stevia. Now most Stevia plants that you buy come from cuttings because the seeds tend to be sterile. I had about a 50% germination rate, which is what I expected. Some germinated in 4 days and some took 21 days, so it was a huge variety of time. Be patient and don't expect all of your seeds to germinate. So that means these plants are between 8 and 11 weeks old. You have to start your stevia early because it grows very slowly. Today, they're only going to stay outside for 2 hours. Then they're going to come back into the house overnight, either here in the kitchen or in the living room. I've set up a second shelf in there because it's time for so many flowers and vegetables to harden off. Now, I have no desire to walk up and down and carry trays to the basement every day. I'd rather they all be on the first floor. And every day, we're going to increase how much time they stay outside. Now, I did pinch back the stevia plants. And I experimented with doing it 3 different ways. On this one, I pinched back at the first true leaves. It had good results. We have 2 side shoots. Now this one, I did it at the second set of true leaves. And we have lots of side shoots come up on that one. And the last one, I only did the tip. It's much taller than the other plants. It does have 3 side shoots. So it seems pinching back at the second set of true leaves did best, but we'll see next year if we get the same results. It was fun to try a variety of ways. Now these were pinched back 5 weeks ago, And then the bigger ones I pinched back again. Through the growing season, you're going to want to continue to pinch back your plants just like you do with basil. Now, I recently added this shelf for hardening off, and the basil's already there, because soon there would be way too many plants filling up this patio. The tomatoes, the zinnias, the sunflowers, those are all also hardening off. Every day I'm going to increase the sun exposure and the exposure to the wind. Right now, the shelf is in a protected area, but the other seedlings are already in full sun. Here, let me show you. These seedlings are going to stay in the house overnight and come out every morning when it's warm enough, 7 to 10 days. Now this netting is to protect from wildlife, mostly squirrels and birds. This is a blueberry bush net with a zipper. Stevia loves the warmth, so wait until 2 weeks after your last frost to plant them out into the garden. I don't need all of these plants, I only need a few, and most I'll give away free to the community, out on the community shelf I've set up behind the garage. Good afternoon, and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time to plant out our stevia. Now this stevia, it's 14 weeks old. It grows very slowly, and it's already hardened off for 3 weeks. Stevia, it's a warm weather plant, and it likes full sun to partial shade. It's going to become 18 to 30 inches tall and about 18 inches wide. And I have already measured and spaced them 18 inches apart. I'm only going to plant 2. Now, if you're going to make rows of stevia, you're going to space your rows. Hang on, let me check my notes. You want your rows to be 30 inches apart. Now I've already pinched these back 8 weeks ago. And it's caused it to branch out. Now the leaves are the sweetest right before they flower, and you can harvest the whole plant or leave a third of the plant to let it grow some more. Don't overfeed your stevia. It'll grow big leaves, but they won't have much sweetness to them. Squirrels, robins, and skunks would love to dig in these holes, so I need to protect them. I'm going to use 4 squares of hardware cloth secured with some landscape pins. Now remember when we were just planting the yellow squash, how there were slugs in the bottom of the pots? I checked and there weren't any in the stevia. Slugs, they don't want to eat the stevia, but I am still going to add some organic slug control because being near the cabbage, I know there's slugs in this area. This stake and this cage are going to help protect these plants from me accidentally stepping on them. Don't overwater your stevia. It can suffer from root rot, especially if you're growing it in a container. Now I'm going to water it today. Make sure any air pockets get worked out, and then it's going to rain this week and water for me. So make sure not to overwater your stevia. Now what am I going to do with the rest of these? Well, I'm going to share them with my community. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Today it's time to harvest our stevia. This cool morning is the best time to harvest. It's going to make the stevia sweeter. Now, in my experience, homegrown stevia doesn't taste exactly like store-bought. I tend to use liquid stevia, but homegrown is going to have a greener taste. It's going to be sweetest right up here at the tips. The young, tender, light green parts. There's no green taste. So it's possible just to harvest the tips, but that's going to require growing a lot of stevia, and I only have this one plant. Stevia is going to be sweetest right before it flowers. Early October here in north central Maryland is the perfect time to harvest. Any obviously damaged leaves, like I just saw one. Where is it? Hold on a second. There it is. Just discard that. You don't want to use those. And you don't want to save the stems. Go ahead and throw those into the compost. Now I'm going to wash these, and I'll strip off the rest of these leaves. Now this really tender, soft stem at the top, it's sweet, and I'm going to save those. But right about here, it starts getting less flexible. And those aren't worth saving. And of course, not the stems. These are too tough. This plant is 8 months old. I started under lights down in my basement back at the beginning of February. It's exactly 8 months old. I planted it out in mid-May, so it's been out in the garden growing for 5 months. It's sticky. Now my plan is to preserve the stevia 2 ways. I'm going to take the fresh stevia, grind it up, and freeze it in cubes. And the rest of it I'll dehydrate and grind it into a powder. Now you can steep the stevia and make a liquid with either water or vodka. And I've done both of those. I have videos on them I made, I think, 5 years ago. But for me, it's not worth my time. I found that by the time I boil it down and condense it, the sweetness just tastes too green. I prefer to dehydrate it. So I think the fresh or frozen leaves are best in teas. And I use the dehydrated more in making sweet gluten-free breads. Now something like this, be careful, that might be bird droppings. So right here is because I've harvested before. This isn't my first harvest, but it is my last. I don't use homegrown stevia in desserts. For me, like I said, it just has too much of a green taste. That's fine. It doesn't come out in tea, and it doesn't come out in the sweetbreads. But for desserts, I stopped trying. I felt like I was just wasting my ingredients. But if you have had successful results using homegrown stevia in desserts, please let me know how you do it. Not bad for just one plant. This is a small garden. I don't give stevia much space. Birds are busy over there. Curious who that is. A lot of our songbirds, they've left and gone south. But I think there's 1 or 2 catbirds left. One of them calls to me every morning in the garden. Yeah, they're over there eating some berries. Let's get this in the house and fill it up with some water. Now what am I gonna do with this plant? Well, for now we're gonna leave it, but we're gonna come back later, dig it up, and put it in a pot to overwinter down in the basement under some lights. I left about 18 inches. Now stevia seeds most of the time are infertile. That's the reason when you buy seeds, it's hard to get them to germinate. It's really best to either overwinter your plant or take some cuttings. Empty. Good afternoon and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. Tonight is our first frost, so we need to pot up our stevia. We need to bring it into the house. First, I want to cut out any old stems, like here in the middle. That looks pretty good. I harvested last week and I left about a third of the plant. I do expect all of these leaves to get stressed and they might fall off. We'll see. The roots aren't deep. They're really shallow. And be careful not to break off the stems. I'm going to use this pot. I'm not sure what the size is. I found it for free. I actually have 2 of them. This will be a good size and it's nice and light and easy to carry into the house. I'm going to leave the soil on the roots, but I'm going to fill the pot up with potting soil. I'm not going to use garden soil in the pot. Now, if that's not enough, we have more in the garage. We do need a little bit more soil, so let's go get some. I'm using this ProMix Organic Garden Mix. It is a potting soil. I like that it comes compressed with this handle. It's really easy to store. We'll bring it into the basement and then we'll add more water. I don't want it heavy while I'm carrying it in. And if the soil settles, we have more in the basement. So come on, let's get it into the house. Good morning and welcome back to Withrow Urban Homestead. It's mid-November and last night was our first hard freeze. It's 28 degrees out there, so we're back in the basement grow room for a Stevia update. It's about a month ago that we potted up this stevia, mid-October, before our first frost. And be careful not to break off the stem. It's still alive, and there's actually some new growth. That new growth, I want to snip off and save and make some new plants. We're going to try to propagate it in water. We'll see. Now I want to prune the plant to about 6 inches high, about right here. Now these stems, they're dry, so they're not alive anymore. Look here on the ends. But the stems that are still green, we're going to add those to the water too. Now, are those too thick? I don't know. We'll find out. You don't want the leaves in the water because that'll cause them to rot. Looks like we need to add some yellow sticky papers for the fungus gnats. They come from your potting soil mix. It tends to happen when you grow plants indoors. We don't have any in the cabinet. I think they're all in the garage, so we'll go get some later. And we'll put one up on the lights and down in the pot. And these are dried out too, but this one has a little bit of green on it. See right here? So we'll see. Now I raised it up closer to the light. And I found the sticky papers over there on some shelves. I'm still setting up this grow room for winter. Now this is the furnace room, and it tends to run 65 to 75 degrees, depending if the heat is running. I do wait to water the stevia until there's dry, 1 inch deep into the soil. Now come back and check to see how the stevia is doing. Stevia is hard to start from seeds, which is the typical way I grow my stevia. So this year we decided to try and overwinter it, and it'll be ready to plant back out in the spring. Now I'm going to show you 2 ways I'm using the stevia. Now, every morning I have it in my coffee. I'm going to try it powdered and the liquid. You know, with the water, like I just showed you how to make. Homemade stevia, some people complain that it tastes like grass. Now, with my coffee, I don't have any kind of grass taste. Now, I wouldn't recommend using it with cooking. It's too weak. With coffee, it seems pretty good to me. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now, next time I'm going to double the powder. 2 tablespoons instead of 1. But it's pretty good. There's no bitter grass taste. Yeah, that's perfect. 1/2 cup of liquid for 2 quarts of coffee is perfect.